There's been a tornado warning for the past 3 days. I don't think what's outside is a tornado. I live in the Midwest, and I won't say where. That's irrelevant. But I live in an area that's prone to weather warnings, specifically tornadoes. We mostly get them between April and June, but it's not too unusual to get them later in the year. What is usual, however, is having them last for 3 days. It began 3 days ago. I had just gotten home from another boring day's work, and I had plopped myself down on the couch with a beer, a microwave dinner, and my dog. Sam was a small rescue dog. I don't know her exact breed. I planned on getting a little drunk and then falling asleep to some shitty late night TV. My usual weekday routine. When I was rudely interrupted by my TV and phone blasting a tornado warning. Looking outside, I could see that it was a little stormy, but it definitely didn't look like tornado weather. Sighing, I pulled myself off the couch and I took my dog and dinner down into the cellar below my house. I only realized after I closed the door that I forgot my beer. My cellar is just as glamorous as my house. I'm sure you can imagine what that means. Walking down the steps, my hand made its way across the wall before finding the light switch. I knew that power wouldn't last long, so I began to warm up the generator. After that, I double-checked I had some food and water before sitting down in my old chair that I kept down here, and I switched on my radio. I figured I would at least get a half an hour of radio signal before it was distorted and eventually washed away by the storm. While I began finishing my dinner, the radio crackled to life. Emergency weather alert broadcast for Sumner County, Kansas. Residents are advised to stay indoors or in a storm cellar and to shut all windows. Residents are also advised to lock all doors, barricade cellar entrances, and not to answer any call for help or request for entry until an official signal. Stay safe and good luck. Wait, what? I said, bolting upright and almost choking on my food. I quickly leaned forward and I turned up the radio volume, hoping to catch the warning for a second time. Residents are also advised to lock all doors, barricade cellar entrances, and to not answer any call for help or request for entry until an official signal. Stay safe and good. The radio had finally cut out, just as rain began to pelt the roof of the rest of the upstairs. No matter, I heard it again for certain. Lock all doors, barricade cellar entrances, and not to answer any call for help or request for entry until an official signal. It played again in my head. Don't get me wrong, this isn't my first rodeo when it comes to big storms or tornadoes. I've spent countless hours holed up in here while rain, lightning, and tornadoes and hail wreaked havoc above me. But never in my life had I been told that I needed to lock my doors, or not to answer any call for help or request for entry. That was weird. Initially, I played it off as there possibly being looters who would enter the homes of hiding people and rob them. It's happened before, but never during a storm, and never to such an extent to where the county would warn about it. Besides, looters don't try to alert homeowners to their presence. Anyway, I tried my best to not think about it, and eventually, I drifted off to sleep much earlier than I would have, probably due to boredom. With nothing to do other than listening to the pelting rain above you, it's pretty hard to stay awake. I was awoken around 3 a.m. to Sam barking and growling at the cellar door. It was weird. She never barked in storms, only at people at the door or some other dogs. I walked up the stairs and I rested my ears against the cellar door. All I could hear was the heavy rain, and occasionally some thunder. It was weird. The tornado should have passed by now, but we still didn't get an official signal. It's not like I would have slept through it. I'm a light sleeper and I made sure the radio volume was up really high. Just as I was about to go back to my chair, I hear it. The creak of my front door opening. Shit, I thought to myself. I forgot to lock it. Sam started barking louder, despite my attempts to shush her. The house was quiet for a moment. I used this time to stick a wooden board between the door handles, making the door almost impossible to open from the outside. But then I heard it. Footsteps. They were light, but definitely there. I followed them with my ears as they made their way around my house. It was hard to pinpoint where they were, but I definitely heard them in my living room on the carpet, and going up the stairs and into my bedroom. My eyes rushed around the room as my panic rose. I felt like there was a pit in my stomach. I was nauseated with fear. I had left my rifle upstairs, and down here, the best excuse for a weapon was the couple of inch-long steak knives that I had brought down before. I switched off the cellar light, which I had stupidly left on before, and I stuck my eye in between the two cellar doors that opened out into my house. Sam had quieted down, but was still growling. My eye glanced around the limited field of view that it had. I could see my couch, stairs, and closed door to my bathroom, so not too much. It was then that I had noticed that the footsteps had stopped. Was this what the radio had warned about? I thought over all the scenarios in my head. A looter, someone seeking shelter, a wild animal maybe. None of it made sense. And then there was the knock. I wasn't sure if I had heard it properly at first, but it quickly progressed from a quiet tapping into a banging crescendo. It sounded like thousands of fists had descended onto my cellar door, thrashing and pounding against it. Whatever was banging, I knew I couldn't let in. This must have been what the radio had warned about. Instinctively, I jumped back, and I nearly fell backwards down the stairs leading into my cellar. Surprisingly, I composed myself and I yelled at whatever was out there. "Get out of my house! I'm armed!" I shouted. I don't think it was too convincing, probably thanks to the slight tremble in my voice. The banging on my door stopped. Did I scare it away? I thought to myself. It was quiet for a few minutes, but the uneasy silence was shattered when it spoke. "Hey man, you need to let me in. It's really dangerous out here. I don't know how long I can last." Impossible. It was the voice of my brother. I hadn't seen him in years, not since he moved to the West Coast. There is no possible way that he was in state. Hell, he didn't even know where I lived. Every ounce of my being knew that whatever spoke was definitely not my brother, but something else. And yet I still replied. "Mark? Yeah, it's been a while. Let me in. I need to see you." At the end of its sentence, its voice trailed off. It was deeper, almost raspy. Not the voice of my brother at all. I knew I couldn't respond. It spoke again. "Look, Alec, for the love of God, let me in. It's dangerous out here. The storm is strong." I didn't give it the satisfaction of a reply, which only seemed to make it more angry. "Let me in!" It screamed out of frustration. Its scream was sickening, a high-pitched wail that filled the air and made me want to throw up. After that, it started banging on the door again. It was quiet for a couple of hours after that. The storm continued, seemingly without a tornado. However, I was startled to hear my radio crackle to life. Emergency weather alert canceled. Residents are advised to leave their cellars to secure properties. That is all. I let out a sigh of relief. However, my relief was short-lived. The broadcast seemed off. Usually at the end of a storm, there would be a damage report in locations where you could go to receive aid and even maybe a bed for the night. Plus, I could still hear the rain and thunder above me. There was no way a signal could get through. It must have somehow hijacked my radio signal. Even though I didn't give any response to the message, my radio continued to say that I could leave. Every few minutes, the same line would be repeated, with perfect sound quality. It was enough to make me want to unplug the thing altogether, if I wasn't afraid of missing the actual end signal. Since all of that, it's been rather quiet. 3 days have passed without the storm or my radio subsiding. That thing, whatever it is still out there, occasionally banging on my door to remind me. I'm at my wit's end. If it wasn't for Sam, I think I would have gone insane by now. That's all for the moment. I'm afraid that I couldn't do that to Sam. She's been with me through thick and thin. Even though my cellar is a bit decrepit, I still kept it constantly stocked with supplies for these exact situations. Well, maybe not this exact situation, but one where I have to stay down here for a few days. Anyway, I tried one last time to call my neighbors. This time, thank God, they actually picked up. Hello, Mr. Robinson. I try not to sound too shaky on the phone. Yes. Do you need help, Alec? I paused. I couldn't tell them about what was outside of my door. They wouldn't believe me and probably just tell me to screw off. Or Mr. Robinson would come over and potentially risk his life by initiating contact with that thing. Yeah, I'm in a bit of a spot. I'm running out of food and water and my generator's broken. Would it be alright if I stayed with you guys until the storm's out? Yes, I think that would be okay. We still have plenty of supplies, so come on over. Just knock on the door around the back of the house and we'll let you in. Alright, thanks. See you then. I hung up and I prayed to God that I had just spoken to Mr. Robinson, and not whatever the hell was out there. I had a hunch that I was safe going over there though, and because if this was the thing that had picked up the phone, I think it would have been much more keen for me to go. Despite its incredible ability to change its voice, subtlety is something that it lacked. In the time between these posts, I've also done some research on what it is. A commenter on my last post said that it could have been a Wendigo. I'll be honest, I've never heard of the thing outside of a couple of horror stories. It says on the Wikipedia page that it's a man-eating creature that has some human characteristics, but it also resides in the forest regions of the East Coast and Great Lakes, so I don't know if one could get all the way down to Kansas. Although I don't quite know what it is, I know that I don't want to come into contact with it. And before I made a mad dash into my neighbor's yard, I had to work out how to distract the thing. Luckily, I still knew that it was right above me, due to its constantly banging on the door. Looking through the crack in between the two doors, I still couldn't see anything despite the constant banging. I'll be honest, I'm kind of thankful for that. I think I would have a heart attack if I looked out and saw an eyeball looking back at me, or something like that. I knew where it was though, and that was the main thing. For the rest of the fourth day, I used a small sand shovel to dig out the back of the cellar. Even though the weather outside was stormy, the digging left me sweaty and thirsty in the sweltering Kansas heat. The work was hard, especially with my limited equipment. Most of what I dug up was just dirt. However, there were bits of rubble from what I assumed was parts of the walls that had caved in. Despite the mud from the leaking ceiling and my shovel breaking, I eventually managed to dig out the back side of the cellar by about 6 p.m. Now I just had to figure out a way to distract the creature and get me and Sam into my neighbor's cellar without being found by the thing. I spent the next half an hour setting up and gathering the materials for my plan. And then I gave Sam some dinner and I made myself some minute noodles in 59 seconds. I was in a rush to get out. And my plan. As quietly as I could, I replaced the board between the cellar doors with an old bit of wood that I dug up that was weak in the center. I attached a bit of survival rope to it, tying a loop around the weakest point. And then I packed my backpack with a bit of food, water, and batteries. On top of all that, I packed in Sam. Luckily, she was quite small. And then with the rope in one hand and my knife in the other, I made my way over to the recently excavated outside door, and I prepared to make a run for it. "All right, come on in," I screamed at the top of my lungs. Before swinging the outside cellar doors open and without looking back, I made a run for it. I sprinted across the dry grass in my yard and I leapt over the poorly maintained hedge into my neighbors, before banging on their cellar door and screaming for them to let me in. Mrs. Robinson opened the doors and ushered me in. Come in, come in. You're already drenched just standing out there." I jumped down into the cellar, and I was shocked to find that there was no light. It was almost pitch black inside. "Oh, Alec, you've finally arrived," Mr. Robinson said, always glad to have visitors. "Sorry it's a bit dark. Our generator died about an hour ago." "It's fine, really. Better than being out of food," I replied, just glad to be away from that thing. "Yeah, I bet. Anyway, when was the last time that you saw your brother Mark?" "What do you mean?" "Oh, he popped in a moment ago. He was looking, wondering where you were." I started to sweat, my adrenaline up and pumping again after a brief calm period. "Is he here?" "Hello, Alec.